So welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Karen Corman and I have the privilege of being the Executive Director of the UIC Alumni Association. Welcome to the UIC Alumni Exchange Series. We are hosting weekly events that bring you news, knowledge, and entertainment to help you explore, connect, and even escape from the everyday with a community of UIC alumni, faculty, and staff experts. You'll hear me say this just a few times today, but I encourage you to visit go.uic.edu/alumni exchange for the latest and greatest programming. And with that, I'm excited to start our UIC Alumni Exchange program this evening by welcoming three-time alumnus, Dr. Benjamin Ritter, who will lead us into a discussion about finding your career sweet spot and help you discover what you should do next in your career and how to create a career that you love, even in these challenging times. Thank you, Ben, for being with us this evening, and I'll turn it over to you to begin the discussion.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me and welcoming me, and thank you to everyone that is here. I do also love seeing faces, so please keep your video on. Send your comments and questions in the chat. We are watching them and we'll respond to them. This event is for you, so please make it for you. We're gonna start with a quick poll. So if we can launch that up, I just kind of want to know where everyone is in their career journey. Just one question. So are you looking for a new job? Are you trying to improve your current job? Looking to launch a business or ready to retire? So far, almost an even split between looking for a new job and trying to improve your current job, and a couple looking to launch a business. Too ready to retire? I'll join up with you. Okay, thank you so much. This helps me a lot in just how I speak to finding your career sweet spot. So let's move forward. Okay, so there is a ton going on in the world right now. I mean, the pandemic, quarantine, working from home, maybe not working right now, a lot of political stuff, civil rights movement. There's so many extra distractions and extra things to focus on and priorities that you have in your life. I am just so glad again that you've made it to this event. I mean, there are so many events as well, but I'd like to just ask all of you for this next hour or so, probably a little less now, if we could push all that to the side and just focus. Because again, this workshop is for you. It's about figuring out where your sweet spot is for your career. And so please, turn your phone upside down, turn it off, put your priorities for later, on the back burner, and let's just let go of some of that stress. Take a deep breath in, breathe out, and set the attention that we're going to focus on you tonight. Thank you everyone for doing that. Thank you for committing to this workshop. And a little bit about myself. My name is Dr. Benjamin Ritter. I have been coaching for about 10 years. I have a background in organizational leadership, and a lot of my research has been focused on value congruence and job satisfaction and motivation at work. I'm an author. I'm a nationwide speaker, global now because of the virtual environment, podcaster, author, and also just general entrepreneur. I'm always looking for business to start and have started some in the past as well. But I didn't always want to be a leadership coach, guiding others to create a career they love. When I was really young, I wanted to be an astronaut and an archaeologist. And if you look at old Halloween costumes, supposedly a cowboy. But then through my more professional life, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. I wanted to be a public health advocate. I wanted to be a lobbyist. I actually ended up working in healthcare for 7 years. I ended up as a healthcare executive for 3 of those years. And then I found really what I wanted to do. I chose what I wanted to do, and that was help others develop and help guide them towards a career that they could love. But it just wasn't always like that. I didn't know that this is where I was going to be, and I still don't know where I'm going to go. So I'd like to have a little bit of fun, and let's all just say hi to each other. So if you could introduce yourself in the chat by saying, what did you want to be when you were a kid? Now I'm going to be paying attention to these, so my eyes are going to look a little bit to the left. What was it that you wanted to be when you were young? And really curious, is anyone doing that, doing what they wanted to be as a kid now? Feel free to add that on. Scientist, astronaut, Dallas Cowboy cheerleader, very cool. Wonder how that is now, right? Where people are playing in bubbles. Sports psychologist, jazz musician, senator, chef, teacher, veterinarian, pilot, lawyer. Very cool. Patrice wanted to be an attorney and currently an attorney. A nurse. It's interesting to think about the fact that we wanted to be something when we were younger, but a lot of times aren't that profession now. Very cool if you are, very, very cool. But I wonder why that is, why we have wants when we're younger and we have no limitations and don't have any expectations of what a real job is. But then now when we're trying to choose what's next, we ask ourselves, what should we do? Or what must we do, right? Because of peer pressure, social pressure, the own pressure that we put on ourselves. So I'd like to, at least for this workshop, try to reframe that and say, what do we want to do? What do we truly desire to do? And I'm going to provide a framework for that to help us all come to some answers and some conclusions. Well, let's get back to that mentality of what it was like when we were wondering what we wanted to do when we were a kid. We're going to touch on that mindset. We're going to really just focus on what do we believe about our careers. I'm going to provide that framework, that career sweet spot, figure out how to have a more fulfilling professional life. Answer some questions at the end. I'll even answer some questions during the workshop, so feel free to put them in the chat. But I always like to set the intention for everything that I do to try to learn at least one thing new, to try to share at least one thing that's new. I see some people sharing already in the chat box. Thank you. And to connect with someone new. If someone says something that resonates with you, send them a private message. Connect with them in the chat. These workshops are not just for you to learn about yourself, but they're also for you to connect with others. It's a great opportunity. You're all interested in the same thing. So our career mindset. I'd love for everyone to share in the chat as I talk a little bit about this. What's something that you were told or that you believe regarding your career? For me, one of the number one mindsets that influenced how I treated myself professionally and how I acted was that my work had to be meaningful and that I had to find meaning or get meaning. And that impacted me at work on a daily basis, where I'd go in and not feel like my work was meaningful, not feel like my leadership was making my work meaningful, or that my organization wasn't meaningful enough. And so I became more resentful towards my employer. I pulled back from relationships. I felt like my work wasn't for me. In actuality, when I reflected back on that, I realized that I was basically digging my own hole. They're not supposed to give me meaning. Meaning is an emotion, and that I'm supposed to create meaning on a daily basis, and that's within my control. Because the only person that can create an emotion is you. And so that really started causing me to do a little bit more research on where that comes from and what I feel is meaningful, what I feel is my purpose at work. And then at the same time, what does balance look like? Because a large part of my professional career was focused on creating that meaning and living true to this purpose, but then not achieving it, not being successful in it. So then letting my confidence be affected by that, investing more heavily in it, so distancing myself from social relationships. So my career mindset in the past was really steering me down a negative spiral. And so today I'd really challenge yourself, if you're thinking that your work isn't exactly where you want to be, how can you make it a little bit more of a place that you want to be? And if you're really just driving for that next position or that next title, ask yourself, do I have the right balance in my life? Am I chasing something instead of living in the present right now? So I'd love for everyone to do another reframe and believe that your career is not a race. You're not trying to get anywhere, that it's an opportunity. So that every single moment right now is building skills within you, is teaching you more about yourself. You're building relationships that can support you. And very often, if we treat it as a race, we don't invest in those relationships. We don't focus on solidifying and building strengths and skills. We don't get the most out of our job. We don't craft it in a way that can actually help us in the long run. Because our career is called a career, it's not called a job. And remember that we have jobs. It's actually impossible to know what your career will be until it's over, because you're always going to have a different job or a different role that is going to continue to evolve. So let's try to wrap our minds around this, that a career is a combination of multiple milestones where we're learning, we're trying to create meaning for ourselves, and really taking more accountability for our own professional growth. So what is the career sweet spot? I'd say that mostly everyone on this call has probably picked a job they thought they should have, or that they must do, or maybe made a job choice where they didn't have full control over it. I mean, I was in that position before I launched LFY Consulting. I was searching for a job in the 2010 recession, and for 2.5 years had job contracts that were given to me that I signed on a dotted line, pulled away at the last minute. And so most of my career is actually me reacting to opportunities instead of choosing what I want and going after that opportunity. You know, choosing the organizations that I want to work for and going and building relationships with people that work there. Figuring out the skills and strengths that I need to get to the next position that I want, and then really dedicating my time to learn those different skills, to level up, and then to also ensure that people believe that I have those skills. And so can we stop reacting to the choices that present themselves to us and dedicate basically the next 6 months to a year, the next job opportunity that you want to create, and dedicate yourself to actually achieving that? We're going to talk a little bit more about how to do that. But ultimately, I'd love for everyone to do their research. What is it that you truly care about? Where do you really want to work? Who in your network potentially could work there and support you? What skills do you need? What are even the career tracks to get to certain places? Because it is a path, it is a journey. You know, every CEO was not a CEO at some point. They were an entry-level position before. And please remember that your career sweet spot, what we're going to talk about next, is a moving target. What's right for you right now might not be right for you in a week, might not be right for you in a month. And so we should always be reevaluating where we want to end up in our professional life, or what might be best for us next. And if we accept that mentality, there's a strong chance that we can actually be more positive, be more optimistic, and make the most of our opportunities through our career. So let's start our research. So I'd hope everyone has something to write on, pen or paper, a Word document open on their computer potentially, because I'd love for you to write some of these down that we're going to go over. I'm also going to be sending a worksheet in the follow-up email that goes over each of the categories of the career sweet spot to help you organize your thoughts and do this on your own as well. So if you don't have something to write, it's okay. But if you do, why not take this time, this focused time? So the first area of the career sweet spot that I want to discuss is what you've been trained to do. And if you want to share in the chat some of the things that are your strengths, I'd love to see some of them. But think about your schooling. What degree did you get? What classes did you take? What skills have you learned over the years from specific jobs, from self-learning? What are just your strengths? Like, what would people, if you ask them what you are great at, what would they say? What about past work experiences, past jobs that you had? So the first part of the career sweet spot really encompasses what you are good at, what you've been trained to do. These are things that you're confident at. It might not be things that you truly like. Like I developed a really great knack for data analysis, and I really don't like it. Like, I really dislike SPSS, doing pivot tables in Excel, but it's something I'm really good at. Really good at analyzing data and coming up with conclusions from it. But it is a skill, so I put that down. I have a background in entrepreneurial management, launched a couple of different businesses, service-based and product-based. I have a degree in health policy administration. I have an MPH as well, and worked in health policy for a bit. I became really passionate about food nutrition, so I self-taught myself everything I could learn about the body and about food. So that's a strength. I was really passionate about learning how to sell, so I studied a ton of different books and videos as much as I could. And when I was younger, this is kind of silly, I was a dog walker. So I'm probably pretty good at walking dogs. I also was a bartender for a while, so I'm probably good at having meaningless conversations and meaningful. These all make up what your strengths are, or what your skills are, and what you are confident at. So thank you to everyone that's been sharing. So the next area of the career sweet spot is what you love to do at work. So think about what energizes you on a daily basis. Think about what you feel successful about. Think about what makes you feel proud. Think about when you're done with the workday, when you go home and you just feel really good about that day. What was it that you were doing? Who was that who were you interacting with? Where were you working? Were you working at home? I know right now probably we're all working at home, but in the past, maybe were you working in the office, working in a co-working space, working at your desk, working in a meeting room? And what skills were you using during that time? And feel free to share this in the chat as well. For myself, I really love facilitation. I love workshops. I love actually having conversations. So if anyone wants to reach out to me and have a conversation after this about what they've learned or any questions they have, feel free. Super active on LinkedIn. I really enjoy being artsy. So I love creating like marketing documents or presentations like this one, flyers. I like making things look pretty, like organizing things. And I actually really like meetings that are straight to the point and have a specific outcome. I recently was working with a client and they really disliked working with one specific department and specific people. And if you dug down and peeled the layers back on that, you found out that there were certain personalities that she didn't like working with, certain ways of handling projects she didn't like working with. And those meetings were incredibly exhausting for her. So if you're having a tough time figuring out what you love, you can look at what you dislike and then just flip that. And that might give you some more information as well. I see in the chat, we have solving technical problems and collaborating with other teams to reach resolutions, offering solutions to others, helping students to identify and achieve their goals. And what I really enjoy about these areas is that they're different for everybody. I mean, if I talk to someone that is really interested in like human development and professional development, they might say having coaching conversations, helping people solve problems, helping people get unstuck. Or other people that I know, I recently had a client that I worked with that really dislikes having coaching conversations. She really does not like helping mold people and helping them grow, much more autonomous, much more likes to be given work and projects and solve them on her own. I see helping others, advocating, communicating, holistic medicine, editing, writing. And a lot of times what you love to do might actually intersect with what you are good at. Sometimes it won't, sometimes it will. Because, I mean, another client really loves to bake and didn't like a lot of other stuff that she was doing. But there were different aspects to baking that might be relevant to her job. Is it making something from scratch and having an outcome? Is it feeling like you actually had like a real impact in what you were creating? Is it time to herself? So ask yourself those questions. Now, this next part is actually in the same section of the career sweet spot, but it's what you love to do in life. And a lot of people may think about this as their values or their passions, their purpose. It's also what energizes you. It's what motivates you. I'd say this is what you would get up at 5 a.m. for. It's potentially what you would get up for on the weekend to do. It could be something that you do in the middle of the night. It's something that you can talk for hours about or would read about for hours. Maybe watch a YouTube video about. So reflect on where you've felt that you've had purpose or that where you've made an impact. or reflect on where you want to have impact, some causes that you truly care about. When I mentioned that I was interested in public health policy, I became really passionate about dismantling corruption in the food industry. I did my capstone on abolishing sugar subsidies. And that actually stemmed from the fact that my mom got really sick. And that still is a motivator for me. Why I help develop other people to be their own leaders is because I want people to make their own choices and not be basically held a victim to people trying to sell a product or something like that. And so your passion might actually not have a direct implication, but have like an underlying implication to what you're doing. And I even think that I'm still on that path to have some role in public health. If you can't think of any times, like anything that you actually feel like you've actually had an impact or a purpose, I ask you to reflect on where you've been happiest in your life and think about maybe the top 3 to 5 memories that you've had where you were the happiest. A lot of times those memories hint at themes, they hint at your values, which actually relate to what you love to do in life. Like, for example, a lot of people will say, I love to travel. Well, how do you like to travel? Do you like traveling with someone? Do you like traveling by yourself? Do you like traveling internationally? Do you like traveling locally? What do you gain from traveling? Can you dissect that a little bit? Is it the adventure? Is it novelty? Do you like going to the same places? I would love if you guys can use one word to describe what you love to do in life, a purpose or impact, and put that in the chat. I'd love to hear what's energizing and motivating people on this call who create and solve. I got some shivers. Narrating. I have a few more. Dancing and learning. I love that. Move, travel. For me, some of my top values are health, openness, justice. And you see how those relate to what I mentioned about public health. Listening to stories, active listening and understanding where someone is coming from. It sounds like connecting in a way. Learning. I'm totally a lifelong learner. I have way too many letters after my name. I make a joke that I'm trying to spell the alphabet. One day I'll get there. Adventures. Beautiful. Thank you everyone for sharing that. So the final area of the career sweet spot is what you want to learn and where you feel challenged. And very often this area is forgotten about. This is so important to help you feel like you're growing, to help you feel like you're not stuck in the same place. I struggle with this a lot because I crave novelty and I'm achievement oriented, which means that I like to continuously accomplish things. And so this little area for me matters a lot. I've actually had to struggle with finding novelty in things that are the same to ensure that I stay consistent and accomplish the things I want to accomplish. So try to identify experiences that you want to have in the future. From the people you'd like to meet, to the skills you'd like to build, to the projects you'd like to work on, to the impact that you might want to have. About 5-ish months ago, well, I took on the new opportunity then, so I'd say probably about 8 or 9 months ago, I felt like I wasn't being challenged anymore in my coaching practice. And I know that this is such an important area of the career sweet spot that I was able to say, it's not that I don't like coaching anymore, it's that I need to feel like that I'm learning, that I'm being challenged. And it wasn't learning new skills anymore. It wasn't like studying books or watching videos. I ended up finding out that I wanted to network with different types of people, with executives, people that were on a different caliber. And I wanted to apply different skills other than just coaching, conversations and sales and prospecting and things like that, and workshops. And so I ended up finding some really neat opportunities because I made that realization. I was aware of that. And if anyone has something that they want to learn in the next year or so, or someone they want to meet, I'd love to hear about that in the chat as well. I think what's great about all of you sharing is that other people also get to read what you're writing. It might give them ideas, or they may resonate with what you're saying and reach out to you and build a connection. Or maybe they know the person that you want to reach out to, or maybe they have that skill or have a network in that area. So use this chat as a way to connect with each other as well. I also know that in the future, I do want to be involved in public health more. And so this is part of my career sweet spot, that idea of public health advocacy. And so that orients and it creates an intention for myself each and every day with the people I connect with, how I mold my work on a daily basis, the opportunities I say yes to. So even if this is something that you want to do, it can truly impact what you're currently doing. So now that we've gone over these 3 different areas, you kind of see how they might intersect. What you want to learn and where you feel challenged, what you've been trained to do, and what you love to do at work and in life, where those intersect, that's where you should be right now. You can make that happen for you. That's where you will feel fulfilled. That's your career sweet spot. And I'd actually ask all of you to plot your current job right now. Your current job, or maybe a previous job if you're not working right now and looking for a position. Where does it fall in this career sweet spot? And share that in the comments. Does it fall in between 2 of them? Does it fall in 1 of them? Does it fall in the bullseye? And what's really interesting, if I reflect on some of my positions in the past, like when I was working in healthcare, I was in a place that I felt like I was trained. I didn't really realize the meaning, and I wasn't really challenged. And so I was confident, but I felt stuck, and I didn't feel like I was really making an impact. I felt underutilized. Now, in instances where maybe you feel challenged all the time, but you don't have either area, you will feel underconfident, so you'll be under stress. You won't feel good at what you're doing, and you won't feel that it's meaningful, so you actually probably won't be very productive because you won't understand the purpose behind it. Now, if you're doing something that you love and it really matters to you, then you'll probably be really engaged and motivated and passionate. But if it's not something you've been trained to do, you'll go through some time until you learn actually how to do that job. You'll go through a time where you're doubting yourself, where your inner critic is really loud and saying you're a failure. And because you're like, I love this, this is supposed to be for me, but you won't feel good at it. And if you're not feeling challenged, you might actually start questioning your passion and your purpose and the meaning. You'll be like, do I really not know what I'm supposed to be doing right now? Did I make the wrong choice? Now, let's say you are in a place where you feel like you're being challenged, in a place where you're learning on a daily basis and you're passionate about what you're doing, but you don't feel good at it. That lack of confidence, again, will truly impact you. So if you're in a position like that, use this diagram to make some choices. If you don't feel confident in something, then can you take a class? Can you get your employer to fund something for you? Can you take your own class? There's a ton of deals right now. Can you take a workshop like this one? Can you get some books? Can you listen to some podcasts? Can you be intentional about building confidence? Can you also maybe reflect on your past successes? And because maybe you're just not really aware of your strengths, you're working too hard. So sit back and really kind of make a success folder of things that you've accomplished in life, and even ask coworkers and maybe previous bosses about where you've succeeded, because that can really help build some confidence as well. Kind of disassociates yourself from your inner critic, and you can see yourself from an outside perspective. If you're in a place where you don't feel challenged, that's a great opportunity for you to plot out what you want to learn, the people you want to meet, and then actually bring that to your manager or to your boss, or to start talking to coworkers about how to incorporate yourself into the new work. And if you're in a place where you actually feel that it's right for you, but you don't feel like you're challenged or you're good at what you do, I highly recommend that you don't doubt yourself, that you spend some time focusing on building those strengths, on finding ways to feel challenged. And I already mentioned a little bit about what to do when you're in a place where you don't feel that it's meaningful. But I'd like to just quickly remind everyone that meaning is an emotion. It's based on our perception. And try to reframe how you view your work. Let go of resentment, let go of judgment. Try to find the greater impact that your role is having, the organization is playing. Try to see potentially what this job means for your future. And try to remind yourself through affirmations, maybe on a daily basis, or reminders in your phone, about why your work is meaningful. You'll find that you will have more motivation, more energy. So I'd love to ask everybody, put all this together. What could potentially be next for you? What can you do at your current job? Is there another job that you're now thinking about going for, another organization that you want to reach out to? Is there someone that you want to connect with? I know everyone's been sharing in the chat box so far. I can't wait to read those a little bit later, but I'd love for everyone to share what could potentially be next. Did anyone gain some clarity right now? Does anyone have a potential next step for themselves? Remember, I'm also going to be sending the worksheet regarding the sweet spot. So you'll be able to actually do this for yourself as well again, because this is a moving target.
And if I may interrupt, there was not really a question, but a comment. Somebody made the comment that they've always worked hard and now they feel burnt out with their current career. So I wonder if you have any advice around that comment.
I was you. Sometimes I am still that person that works too hard, but luckily I have built some kind of alarm bells in my mind that understand what it feels like to be burnt out, what it feels like to really just not have energy to do the simplest tasks, almost wanting to just like asking yourself, what's the purpose of this again? And so I would really first recommend that you just take a break for a little bit, to honor the fact that you're exhausted, to honor the fact that you feel burnt out, to surround yourself with things that fill you up, the things that you love. And then to really ask yourself, when did you start feeling burnt out? What are the things that you feel drain you? And how can you start saying no to some of those things? How can you start building boundaries to ensure that you're constantly energized? And you can also think back at times where you were really motivated and really energized. What was going on then? Can you integrate some of that back into your life? But what you just did by asking that question, by saying that I'm burnt out, by saying that I'm exhausted, that is literally the first step. It's acknowledging that something is going on that is draining you. But the next step is you have to give yourself permission to take a break. You have to give yourself permission to honor who you actually are or want to be, and the life that you're not living because you're burnt out, right? You're not, in some way, shape, or form, you're not honoring yourself. So what are you valuing right now? What are you saying is most important? And what has kind of lost your attention? What has lost your focus? That'd just be my initial response.
Great, thank you. Do you want some additional questions, or would you prefer to hold?
Sure. So let's take some questions right now on this part, and then I have a little bit of a bonus section if we have more time.
Okay, excellent.
Oh, one more thing, by the way, about if you're feeling burnt out. A lot of times, if you're burnt out, you've distanced yourself from social relationships and people that could support you, not just in your career, but your personal life. So please, please, please take a step back and ask yourself, what relationships can you start investing in a little bit? Because bringing people closer to you, having that support system will keep you motivated, will keep you energized. And when you're really not allowing yourself to have the boundaries you need, they'll sometimes kind of knock you upside the head a little bit and say, come on, let's hang out. Let's honor ourselves a little bit.
I think that's great advice. Okay, so another question. The person says, I am unsure of what is meaningful and matters the most to me. Do you have some ideas to find that thing?
Mm-hmm. I'd love to recommend a book that made an impact on me. Well, two books, actually. I think one's in the book club right now, which is Design Your Life.
It is.
And the other one was So Good They Can't Ignore You, which is by Cal Newport, I believe. And my initial desire in terms of how to respond to this was to give you an exercise to find out what matters to you. But I need to preface this with a disclaimer that what matters to you may change over time. And to always remember what matters to you should always take second to you. And I think that this also kind of leads to burnout if we, kind of leads to the burnout question that we just discussed. If you overinvest in what matters to you and don't have balance, and you think that it's everything you need to do with your life and everything you need to accomplish, you will burn out for sure. So just want to put that disclaimer out there that knowing what matters is not everything. Learning what matters to you, so much more important. And learning what matters to you takes experiences. It takes you going out there and saying yes to work that makes you uncomfortable. It takes you going out there and saying yes to work that makes you comfortable. But the more experiences you have, the more you will find out about yourself. And you might not actually have to go do that work. You can go talk to someone about it. You can listen to a podcast about it, watch a documentary about it, read someone's biography about it. But so go out there and have some new experiences. Now, if you just want to do an exercise, the one I recommended about exploring your past memories is really helpful. So if you list out your 5 happiest moments in your life, and also list out your 5 least happiest moments in your life, and detail those out, not only will you know more about your journey and gain a little bit of confidence and from that reflection, but you can examine those memories for themes and similarities. And a lot of times those similarities and themes lead to your values, what you truly care about, where you're energized, where you're most fulfilled. And then you could ask yourself, what organizations exemplify these values? What type of work can I do that really incorporates these values and that drive the type of work that you want to do? This kind of relates to the culture of an organization or the person job value congruence that I kind of mentioned about my research in the past. So that's one thing you can do, one step that I'd recommend for sure. And if you want to take it a little bit further, you can actually list out the things that energize you at work, and then ask yourself, well, how do these areas that energize us, kind of what we were doing with our strengths and skills and things you love to do, how do they relate to your values, and how can you find where they intersect? Just going back to the career sweet spot again.
It's a really interesting approach to self-reflection and really trying to figure out where you'll be happiest. I saw some earlier comments about if you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. And I think that's very true.
Yeah. And to that point, like, it always feels like work. I mean, you're going to like it more, but work is work. And I remember I go through moments in my life where I just go, man, this whole like operation of having to work for a living, who came up with that? But depending on how you perceive your work, the value that you feel from it, the relationships that you have from your work, how good you feel about it, and just the fact that you're growing and feeling like you're challenging yourself, that can really counter that idea. It can really make you feel energized each and every day and make work a gift, because really we're spending so much of our time there. It should be a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question for you. The person asks, how do you distinguish between pandemic burnout and career burnout?
Well, I'll reflect on my own experiences. I thought that I'd be fine because I work from home anyways. But the disruption of my schedule and my routine had a pretty severe impact on me, especially the loss of real social interaction and relationships. And I had to take a step back and I had to re-examine my life, and I had to create interventions like sectioning off my work area with a new rug and a new desk, and using only a work cup when I was at work, and ensuring that I went for walks. I took myself for a walk on a day, 3 times a day, and saying no to video sometimes. So I could actually take some calls on walks, and I didn't feel like I had to stare at a screen for hours. And making sure that, my life had some sort of structure that had little breaks in it. Like my gym was in a certain area of my apartment. My work was in a certain area. My social time was in another area, and creating that routine again. With career burnout, I've experienced that as well. And that again causes you to stop and to reflect and say, what do I feel is draining me? And so I guess for a long answer to your question, making it a little bit shorter, it's to stop and ask yourself, when did this start? Did it start right when the pandemic occurred? Has this been going on for a while? Can you try some small interventions, like I just mentioned, to re-energize yourself? If those work, I think you have your answer. If they don't work, then you can try something else. So take some of the answers from the career sweet spot, try to craft your job a little bit. Take some of the answers from my story about the pandemic and try to craft your life a little bit and see where you are, where it works and where it doesn't work. I do say that a lot of times when I work with people that are in career burnout that realize that they need something new, it hasn't been going on just for 6 months. It's been going on for years. But the pandemic was an opportunity for them to be a little bit by themselves, like a little bit more, and to feel what they were feeling and not be stuck in just the work. And so ask yourself, where is this really stemming from? And you might get some answers, and hopefully that answered your question a little bit.
I think that's very smart. I know you have some bonus material, so I don't know if you want to turn to that and we can come back to more questions.
Yeah, so an extra little bonus assignment for you, because it's one thing to know maybe how to mold your job right now or mold your career right now, but sometimes you might not have like all the information that you need. You might not know like, well, what's later on? Like I understand maybe how to gain a little bit more fulfillment now in the sweet spot, but what's next? What's after this? And so I want to talk a little bit about future mapping. Future mapping is an exercise where you're basically envisioning what life might be like when you retire. So I'd ask everyone to stop for a moment and maybe close your eyes and take a deep breath to clear our minds from everything that we just went over. And envision that you are on your last day of work. Look around you. Where are you? Look at what's in your hand. What are you packing up? What is the type of work that you're doing? What's the last project that you were working on that you're closing off? What's the work that you're handing off to your coworkers? And pause for a moment and reflect on the past couple of years. Who are you working for? What type of impact did you have on the world? What type of relationships did you build? What's your professional network like now? You have to go say bye to people. You're retiring. You have to tell them about this new transition. Who do you have to reach out to? If you have an answer, if it immediately popped up, share it in the chat. I'd love to know. Everyone can open your eyes. Now, I would really suggest and would love everyone to do this exercise a couple times and to come up with 3 to 5 different future endpoints. Remember I mentioned that your career is a journey. And if you're working towards your values, if you're working towards challenges and different skills and things that you love, that journey can end up in a lot of different places. Because what you're doing is not as important as how you feel about what you're doing or the impact that it's having. And so these futures may actually incorporate some parts of your career sweet spot. They may not. And it may be difficult to figure out where you might end up when you retire. You might feel like by picking one thing, you're missing out on something else, which is why you should pick 3 to 5. But when you have these end points, the next step that I would ask everyone to do, and yeah, please keep using the chat box. I see retired educator heading to build a homestead. Very cool. I hope to have a farm one day, by the way. And I'm not even farmsy, but I remember as a kid going to my cousin's farm overseas, and it was just something that I think I want one day for sure. Not sure how that relates to my professional goals right now, but I bet I can tie it in somehow. Alejandro has backyard chickens. Very cool. So after you have those 3 to 5 different endpoints, it's time to pick one of them. I'd love for you to do this for all of them, but then start actually breaking one of those features down, like working backwards to today. And it really helps if you do this with a partner, 100%, because they aren't limited by your expectations, by the way that you think careers need to go. And the reason why we have multiple different endpoints, and now I want you to do this 3 different times for each endpoint, map out 3 different versions of how your future could be. The reason why this is so important, because there are so many different ways to get to the same endpoint. There are some similarities, but there are really many different ways. And I think people sometimes get caught up in again, like what they should do, what they have to do, what they must do, when really the question is, what do you want to do? Because eventually you can get to the same endpoint. I see a couple people sharing. Retire from helping patients have better research, health outcomes. I would love to retire and buy a Christmas tree farm. Very neat, very cool. I love that. And so map out, how can you make that possible? Who do you have to interact with? What types of positions do you need to have or might need to have? What type of experiences do you need to have? What sort of skills do you need to build? And like, for example, if I want to be a chief of people officer in the future, if I worked backwards from that, one version would be to be like a senior director and then a director. And let's say I wanted to work for an organization focused on public health policy and health professionals and leadership development. Well, then I'd have to ensure that those organizations were related and in that future. But a different version could be that I build my business in a certain way and build a partnership with one of these organizations that operates in this field, become good friends with the senior director or an EVP with the CEO, and actually have discussions with them about that transition into that role, what that might look like. And that's not very far-fetched at all. I've had actually offers and opportunities to join organizations in highly senior roles just based on my business. But you could also work for a completely different industry, end up getting in the same role, and based on your networking and relationships, or just how you pitch yourself, transition into that role as well. So try to map out 3 different versions to get to each one of your futures and share this with somebody. And I really hope that this exercise ends up showing you that there are so many different ways to get to a end point that you truly want and to create a career that you can love and feel that is meaningful. And that it's okay if one of your goals doesn't work out, because there are so many paths that you could take to ultimately achieve what you want. And so how do we ensure that the paths that we're on are fulfilling themselves instead of chasing that happiness and chasing that fulfillment? Because we all deserve to have a career that we love. We all deserve to have work that we love. We all can make that happen. We all can craft our current jobs to be in that sweet spot. But a lot of times we don't feel empowered to, for whatever reason, burnout, limitations on ourselves, feeling like we don't have that responsibility, or we can't actually take action like that. So I challenge all of you to do one thing tomorrow to take action towards your career sweet spot and your future map. Would anyone like to share what their future holds in the chat box, or any other questions? We can talk about next steps. I know we're almost at time.
So we encourage people to include questions. We were thinking, and Ben, I'm not at all trying to put you on the spot because we didn't ask you to do this beforehand, but we're thinking when this conversation is over, if folks would like to stay on, we can pull down the PowerPoint and turn on microphones. And if people want to have an informal discussion, we would welcome folks to do that and share their thoughts and comments. But again, we didn't ask you ahead of time to stay on, so we know, Ben, we've only asked you to stay till 7, so certainly we can try and manage the best that we can. But we just see lots of chat going on, and it feels like it might be an opportunity to continue the conversation for some people, but by no means any pressure for you to stay on.
No, I'd love to. I'd love to stay on a little bit. And just a little extra for everyone, if you want to continue the conversation, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I may take a day, but I will respond to any connections and questions or messages. And I also produce a ton of content, video content on YouTube, so feel free to subscribe and watch some of those videos on finding, the right career for you, or how to interview in a certain way, just overall life fulfillment. And I'm giving away a few things. So I'm giving away a free coaching session and a workbook, and you can enter that raffle at the link on the slides. And make sure to watch your inbox for the career sweet spot worksheet, which goes over basically the questions that we went over today, but it allows you to take some notes in a structured format.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. Ben, maybe I'll pause for just a second and just say thank you for sharing this presentation, and thank you for your continued willingness to talk with our alumni and friends. We very much appreciate it. Certainly, I've learned a lot and had some really good self-reflection during this, and I hope others have too. For those of you that do want to stay on and can join us, please do. We are going to give you the ability to turn off your microphones. And again, we can pull down the presentation mode so you can maybe see each other a little bit better. oh, there we go, right there. And so wonderful to see some familiar faces. For those of you that have to jump off, let me just formally thank Ben for all of his time and his talent. We're very proud that you are a UIC graduate and that you have shared all this knowledge with us. As always, we have a program coming up next week, so please check our website and check for the survey to come. But otherwise, let's continue the discussion for, maybe 20, 30 minutes at most, and we can go from there and open it up. So you have the ability to unmute your mics, I believe, and maybe I'll even see if Julio, can you unmute for me just to make sure it works? Perfect. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I knew I could. So, and just would love to hear if anybody has any thoughts or reflections, or maybe would like to ask Ben a direct question if that's okay with you.
Yeah, and about the topic or not about the topic too, super down for that. So if you have a question about my background, my experiences, what I like to eat or something like that, totally, totally open.
First question, are you in a dorm?
No, I have a 1-bedroom apartment, but I'm currently in the mode of packing. So usually the bookshelf behind me is filled with books. And
well, the bookshelf is really attractive. It's a pretty nifty bookshelf.
It was one of the best things about this apartment for sure.
I did see a question that we will be sending the worksheet tomorrow by email, along with Ben's slides will be up online. We can send you a link to that too. And then this presentation will be up in about 10 business days on the Exchange website. Just saw another question come across, so maybe I could ask it for the person, which is, how do you cope with having your career ended for you? That is, academic positions are dependent on funding, and how you deal with feeling like you may be in a sweet spot but cannot stay.
Yeah, it's really tough. I just had a client out of nowhere lose their job, and I have a lot of people losing their jobs right now, and he felt that it was his perfect position, what he was waiting for. And luckily he's building a business on the side, so there's some income coming in, some other opportunities, but it's traumatic. Like if you lose something that you truly care about, even if you don't care about it, to be honest, like it can be really traumatic and feel like, well, what do I do now? And it could feel momentarily hopeless. But I remind you, in a year from now, things may feel very different for yourself, and that emotions are reactions to situations that occur outside of ourselves, but they don't have to dictate actions. And so it sounds like you know what you like doing and what you love doing. And so there's something about academia that fills you up. And what can you find, or what can you create for yourself that gives you those same feelings and allows you to work in the same way? And so just because a job ends, right, that's not your career, what do you need to do next to create the same job for yourself? And so let's first sit in the trauma for a moment and say, well, this really does not feel good. But then, okay, who do I need to start talking to? I have a great story to tell right now. I have been impacted by the current environment, and I want to share my story. I want to share my voice to the world, and I want to connect with people that are also impacted by this current environment and they're working in a certain industry. Because I bet you there are platforms too that want voices like yours. And so can you use this current situation to build stronger relationships with people that could help you get that next job? Can you use this opportunity to learn about maybe what you want in your next position? I always joke about how, every relationship was good that it ended, because in the next relationship, you know exactly what you don't want. Or I mean, even with positions and jobs, there are always some things that you can improve. So then how do you take this information, be proactive, be action oriented, and start looking for new opportunities? It sounds like you have a ton of information about what you enjoy doing. And just because one thing doesn't work out doesn't mean that there isn't something else. And I promise you, there are millions of opportunities. And they may not be on job boards, to be honest. Actually, they say only 20% of the jobs that are actually available in the world are listed on online job boards. So if you do want a new position, I highly recommend that you reach out to your network, because 40% of new hires are from referrals. And I also recommend that you start networking with organizations that you might want to work at, and with people that work at those organizations, just to learn about their career, to learn about the work itself, and to build those relationships, because that's where those hires will come from. And hopefully that answered your question. If not, feel free to type in the chat and I can speak to it a little bit more.
I had another question that came in, but I want to pause to see if anybody else wants to jump in. Okay, well, I'll ask them, and please feel free to either type or unmute. The person asked, how does finding your sweet spot look different at different points in a career journey?
We're going to know about yourself in a different way, right? So at any point in your journey, your sweet spot's going to look different because the skills you have are different. The things that you think that are, that really fulfill you, that you're passionate about, are different. The challenges that you want to face, those are constantly changing. And so depending on if you're just starting out in your career to where you are later on, the sweet spot in itself is going to continuously move as you learn more about yourself. But that requires you to be a little bit aware, right, of where you want to go, of what you're learning, to reflect on your journey so far, and to use all that information, right, do that research to make those decisions that would serve you best moving forwards. I mean, I admit that for a decent part of my career, I was reacting and I wasn't paying attention to my sweet spot. I was comfortable, right? I was the victim. And I would love for people, just if they took one thing away from this, to say, how can I be more proactive? How can I enjoy my job a little bit more? And how can I start planning next steps? Even though I can't predict next steps, I can at least plan next steps so I'm more fulfilled at work.
I had another question come in, which is quite interesting. What advice do you have for people whose passion falls into live events, travel, or other areas that are currently on hold?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really tough. I've had more than enough professional relationships and friends lose their livelihood overnight. They were fully in the travel business or in-person event business. And so first off, I admit that it's a struggle and there's no easy answer here. But this isn't forever. And so what can you do again to be proactive? And what characteristics or skills or strengths or parts of the job that you truly enjoy that maybe you can start doing for yourself, or find platforms that you can do it for. I mean, right now, I actually was doing in-person events for almost 4 years. I never, ever hosted a virtual event. Like, it was not something I did. And when all of this happened, I thought, oh, great, I'm going to take a break. I'm just going to take a break. I don't really want to do this right now. Like, I really enjoyed in-person events. I enjoyed being in a room. I enjoyed feeling the energy. I enjoyed interacting and connecting with new people. I enjoyed just the general organization, like trying to figure out where I could get the cheapest veggie platter, who I could get to sponsor my event. What companies can I message on Instagram this week to pitch them the opportunity to give me free product? And all that was gone overnight. And I was like, I denied the fact that it really mattered to me, but there were some things that I could still do. So I, still reached out to small organizations, asked them if they want to sponsor for my podcast or just my general business, for product, and promote their services. For events, I moved completely virtual. And what's so incredible about this space right now is that everyone needs content. Everyone needs content. Every single platform right now needs to be producing content. And so you have an opportunity to get involved there. And if you're on the production side, I 100% bet that their teams do not feel confident with Zoom. or they're looking for ways to integrate new technology. So where can you still find an opportunity to work in the way that you want? And yes, it may be missing some things, but at times we can't always change, right, the external environment, but maybe we can re-perceive and reframe what we truly enjoy about the work that we can do. And if you really do want to travel, and if you really want to do some sort of level of engagement or interaction, there are ways to do that safely as well. Maybe there's something that now you can create, or maybe there's someone that you can partner with that you used to work with, or that worked at a competing organization, because a lot of people are looking for opportunities right now.
It's an interesting world that we live in, how to, again, use your words, sort of reframe and think about how do we look at this opportunity to do things a little bit differently, because we're forced to, but to do that self-reflection along the way. We had a question come in, and I wonder if the person would be comfortable either via chat or even turn off their mic, which was, what is the best way to start your own business? I'm not sure if that means by finding your sweet spot, or I'm not sure if you want to take a stab at that, or if you would like some more information, and if that person might be comfortable either jumping in or putting it in the chat.
Yeah, if someone is willing to unmute, I'd love to hear their voice. And while they're deciding if they want to, or if they just want to add more context in the chat, I'd say the easiest way and best way to start your own business is to start. And so, I work with a lot of new coaches, a lot of service-based businesses, consultants, and they're so concerned about having the right framework. They're so concerned about having the right messaging, or the website, or the business license. And they're not actually doing anything. Like, they're not coaching, they're not consulting, they're not producing. And so I'd say, like, they maybe think that they're business owners. And I always kind of make a hard line in the sand and say, you're not a business owner, you have a hobby. Right? If you're not actually doing your job, if you're not producing out there, do it for free. Do it for free if you want to, but get out there and start doing whatever it is that you want to provide, whatever service that you want to provide. Produce the product that you want. Do it one by one, and start selling it to people or giving it away to people and get their reactions. Because as you do, you learn. And if you ruminate and hesitate, then you're never actually going to start. You really don't need a lot to get started. You just actually have to start.
That's great. And we did have an alumni exchange program with our entrepreneurial studies program. And so there is some stuff that you can go online and even look to hear what they had to say too, and some resources for alumni. Another question for you. The person says, I know the next step that I want to take in my career, but I'm not sure how to transition into that. I'm currently in a position that is helping, but I can't see past where I'm currently at. What advice could you give?
Mm-hmm. Would Milan like to unmute and give a little bit more context?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. I just want to make sure you can hear me. Yeah. So I'm currently working as a patient access representative at North Shore University Health Systems. The medical record system that we use is Epic. So that has sparked my interest into wanting to do, like, I used to be like an Epic trainer, or like to be either an Epic analysis. My degree is currently in health information management. So it's just like that middle, I guess, area in regards to, whether or not I should possibly apply for like a different position that may also go towards that, or at least from the positions that I have seen, like maybe, to try to find a different position, I guess, that deals with those same responsibilities. That way it can kind of improve my chances of, getting into that type of fields, but I'm not really sure in regards to what to do.
Mm-hmm. Very, very cool, by the way. When I worked in healthcare, I was responsible for our Epic rollout. So I did a lot of training and became a super user and such. And it's a great system. And so, are you saying that the actual like software itself is interesting to you, or what is it about Epic that is getting you kind of motivated at work?
I think it's a mixture of things. I just think due to the fact that it's so helpful, and that every time I use it, it's like it's something new that I find out, that I can do with it.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other technologies or like electronic medical record systems that you've worked with that you really liked?
Probably Cerner PowerChart.
Mm-hmm. Is there any opportunity for you to gain a role where you're currently working on Epic training, or to get more involved with the kind of Epic team or tech team?
Yes and no. There have been positions like in the past for like actual Epic trainer positions. They were available like when I had first started out working. I did apply, and like I didn't get the opportunity. But then in regards to like smaller roles, say like doing something with a help desk, or even I guess like programming, like those aren't really available, and they come ever so often.
Mm-hmm. And so what I'm hearing is there's a desire for it, like you're reaching out to it, but the fact that there's not a specific role might be seeming like a roadblock. And without even talking more and more to gain like a greater understanding of what you truly love about it, what you enjoy, what might be next, I would highly recommend just to build relationships with people that are responsible with this area where you work. And what's wonderful is that you have people that will literally pick up the phone because you're a coworker, and you can even schedule time to go over more advanced skills, to schedule time to learn about how they got to where they are, what they want to do. Maybe they have a career path that you haven't thought about, and maybe even some side projects that you can get involved on. I remember when I was working in healthcare, they always needed more people. And so yes, it may be an overextension of yourself, but then how do you say no to something that you're doing? How do you have a conversation with your director and be like, I really feel drawn to this area of healthcare, and I'd love to get more expertise and involvement in it. Would you support me dedicating 5 hours of my week to this potentially? And so how can you build the relationships? How can you craft your work to be more related to it? And then how can you maybe build your network with people that are working at Epic? I mean, Epic's not that far away from Chicago, at least their centers, from what I remember when I was looking at consultant positions, were they in Wisconsin or Michigan? I'm not sure,
Wisconsin.
but Wisconsin. So who can you just start connecting with? If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, I would recommend to reach out to some people there and just connect with them and send them a follow-up message to learn about their work, and start building a community of people that have this expertise and that might be able to give you more information on what it's like to actually do that type of work. So those are some general thoughts and ideas. What do you think as a potential next step?
I'm sorry, were you asking, or was that?
Yeah. So what do you think about maybe a potential action step that you might take and move forward with?
You know what, I would actually have to think about that, because I have previously spoken to people within my department about wanting to do other things. There have been like previous projects that I've been on in the past, but I would really have to think about the next step. But I mean, it never hurts to give it another try.
Yeah, and sometimes there can be roadblocks. Like when I was working in healthcare, I tried to craft my job to be more related to leadership coaching and talent development. And they said yes, and they put me on those projects, but then we got acquired, and so everyone lost their job. And so that's when I decided to go get my doctorate and create my own business to pivot the way I did. But there's opportunities at least to learn about the projects that are currently ongoing and what they're working on, and to build relationships with them. And then so maybe your focus needs to be outside your organization. So I'd say kind of have multiple threads going for yourself, right? Figure out, can you just have a phone call with people that are in that department? Then can you schedule some conversations with people that are outside your organization, maybe at other hospitals, or maybe at Epic, or maybe at a competing tech firm? And so, what little actions can you take to build a greater feeling that you're taking action, a greater feeling that you're getting more involved in something that you truly care about? And maybe also spend some time, if you haven't yet, learning kind of what's new at Epic and learning the lingo and the terminology that might be useful and when you're actually having these conversations too. And so I feel like there's more of a backstory there, and I actually would really, if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'd love to talk this out a little bit more with you.
Sure. I went ahead and sent you a request during your presentation. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
It's fantastic networking right on the spot. I love it.
And you got people in the chat sending out some ideas as well.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, we've had a couple, actually 3 or 4 questions sort of come in about education and your degrees. So I'm going to try and combine them to a 2-part question. First part being is, do you have any advice for extending learning when you can't afford to get another degree, or you don't want to accrue the debt to get another degree? That's part 1 of them.
Yeah, it's super tough. I mean, I'll be honest, when I went to go to grad school, I met with my mentor and she said, don't. I mean, so honestly, like she said, if it's, because I was a business major, and she said, you're going to get your MBA in entrepreneurial management. Why would you do that? Well, you have a business degree. And luckily the next week, due to some networking of my own, by going into UIC and some offices and building relationships, I was able to get a GA. And so it funded the majority of my dual master's degree at UIC. I worked for the school in the student employment office running an STS temporary job placement program. It still cost a decent amount of money. And I worked nights and I worked for the school. I was a bartender for many, many years. And making the decision after not being in school for 2010 for 5 years, 5.5 years, when I went back to get my doctorate, it was really tough. I actually, looked at the cost and was like, okay, here's $100,000. Is this something that I actually want to do with my life? And how do I take this on and not have to take debt? Or like, what do I have to do? And how do I have to orient my life for a few years to make this work? And to be honest, it was really tough. I worked full time. I worked full time in healthcare, and I worked at 2 different bars. I worked 4 nights a week, and I also did odd jobs. And luckily, after a little bit with the right savings, the right management of my money, I went down to just weekends. But I really put in a lot of hours of work during that time, as well as building a business. So I was just really smart with my money. I didn't spend it on frivolous things. I paid out of pocket. And if I also recommend if you take loans, you make sure right now that you're really negotiating those payments, because you can. The banks are being more generous than ever before. And I use the word generous loosely. But yes, it's a huge financial investment, 100%. And does it matter? I don't know if it matters 100%, other than the relationships that you can build, the education that you could receive, depending on how you focus, throughout the degree program, and how you really leverage all of that moving forward. So I think it can be very valuable, but you get what you put in. And I will be 100% honest, in my degree programs, I was not networking. I was not building relationships. I was doing it to get the degree in a way. And I think I lost out on a huge opportunity to utilize like the resources at UIC, the resources of my other programs, to really build my career and to support myself moving forwards.
I think you actually answered part 2, but I'm just going to ask you the question. If there's anything else you want to add to, if not, I've got another question. Part 2 of that was, I'm specifically interested in your MBA and what you were able to gain with it, what job opportunities opened up to you, and how did you expand your network while in school? And you just touched upon that, very frankly.
Yeah, what I think is really important in terms of school and funding and stuff like that, that you ask yourself, what am I looking to gain from this degree? Like, what do I think this degree gives me? And when I went to go enroll in my MBA, the MBA program in entrepreneurial management, I was really excited about the tech venture program, which allows you to take a technology and actually bring it to market, which was super cool. It was a really great experience. But I was going to school at that time. I made that decision because I was about to launch a food-based business and didn't have enough confidence and believe that I was credible enough to actually do it. So that motivation to go to school was misdirected. I didn't need to go to school to launch that business. I could have launched that business. If I launched that business, I could be in a very different place than I am today. But what's so powerful, though, about joining that program is I learned about the MPH program, and my desires for health and public health really evolved and became a crucial component of who I am today. So I did learn a ton from the MBA program. I learned a ton from the MPH program, and it really oriented my life moving forwards. Like I said, I did not network like I should have, 100%. I missed out on a ton of relationships because I was going to school and then, leaving and not worrying about kind of, what I was missing out on in a way. So I highly recommend, if you decide to join a program for an advanced degree, that you invest an extra hour of every day that you're in class to invest in the relationships there on campus, or virtually, even to reach out to people. I mean, there are directories of people that you're probably going to be in class with, class lists. How can you connect with them on LinkedIn, connect with them on virtual Zoom calls, and start building relationships and sharing what you're passionate about? And you may not have all the answers, but what you're trying to do right now is build relationships that are going to be sustainable and going to last. That's just like what we talked about in the beginning. Most of the jobs come from your network. Most of the jobs that you will have moving forwards, that really most senior level positions too, are not because you applied for them on LinkedIn. It's because someone recommended you, or it's because you saw an organization and had someone in your network that was working there or at a related organization. So now's the time to invest in those relationships. Now is your time to actually build those skills, right? In class, if there's something you really like, don't just study for the test, go build a relationship with the teacher. I mean, I can't imagine how impressed and how excited a professor would be if one of their students expressed their passion and purpose and tried to build an actual relationship with them to learn more about what to do next in their career.
Absolutely, and how willing they would be to help too. I think they'd be honored to have that those kinds of conversations. I have one more question. If there's any other questions from audience, or anybody would like to unmute, or okay. If you do, please please either put it in chat, or you can raise your little virtual hand that you have at the Zoom function. The last question that came through that I saw is, are there other institutions besides universities to help with learning or obtaining more knowledge on business and entrepreneurship that you might recommend? I mean, I know that you're already going to recommend UIC because you've got all the degrees from us, but.
UIC for sure, and that's it.
Great, perfect. Thank you for joining us. I'm kidding.
It's unlimited, to be honest. It's literally unlimited. The types of communities and organizations that are out there to learn on business and entrepreneurship. I'm a reader, so honestly, like I usually dive in, and I'm an introvert and a reader. Like you might not be able to know that I'm an introvert, but I really do get a lot of energy from being by myself. So a lot of the knowledge that I intake is just self-taught. So like podcasts, like even from like Startup Hustle or Startup Grind, those podcasts, and even like the School of Greatness, and just this variety of personal and professional development ones that I truly enjoy. I think there was another one that's like what is it? I'm gonna look up right now. Another podcast, something MBA. Let's see. But I'm also a member of like ATD, the Association for Talent Development, ILA, which is like a leadership association. So you need to basically go do some research on what type of organizations relate to the field that you want to be involved in. And there's a ton for entrepreneurs in Chicago. I currently mentor for future founders. There's a ton of co-working spaces that are also kind of incubators, like Matter Health, if you're interested in the health field, or 18. Let's see. Wait. So the podcast is the $100 MBA show, which is something that I really like, just in terms of just like random information related to MBA. There's like for sales, if you're looking to be better at sales gravy, which is something I really enjoy. I'm sorry I wasn't more, I think, informative in terms of specific institutions. But there are just, depending on what you're interested in, just take some action and go online and do some research. And of course, connect with UIC because they have a ton of information. In terms of starting your own business, highly recommend SCORE Chicago. The Small Business Association has a ton of resources as well, and also free virtual workshops.
Yeah, I think that's part of our current environment. There's so many resources out there trying to pinpoint which ones are the most useful to you. Okay, well, thank you.
So just to quickly comment on the sales training. So I went like on a obsessive learning streak for a while on sales. So just a ton of really fun books the Psychology of Selling, The Little Red Book of Sales, Book Yourself Solid, Selling is Human, something like that. Selling with Story, it's also a favorite. The podcast I really like is called Sales Gravy. It was really good. By Jeb Blunt, I think is the host. He's also an author. So those were some of my top recommendations.
And I think if I may offer, you've also offered to connect people on LinkedIn. So if they have additional questions, I think you'd be willing. I'm not trying to offer up your space, but
anytime.
Repeating what you said. Ben, thank you so much. And thank you for your flexibility with allowing us to do this new format and try and engage some additional conversation. We are so grateful for you and for all of your time this evening. Again, the slides will be available tomorrow online, and then this presentation will be available in about 10 days. I want to thank all of you for joining us again for this program this evening. Next week, please join us on Wednesday, August 5th at noon Central Standard Time for our next Alumni Exchange event, which will be featuring our UIC John Marshall Law School professor, Steve Schwinn, who will present an interactive discussion on our Constitution in challenging times by helping us interpret and navigate the many societal issues we are facing today. You can find more information, as always, at go.uic.edu/alumni exchange. And of course, please be on the lookout for our survey after this program ends, and we will also send the worksheet that Ben is providing so graciously. Thank you again for joining us this evening. We look forward to seeing you again in the Alumni Exchange, and thank you, Ben, for everything. We're very, very grateful that you are a multiple UIC alumna.
Yeah, thank you so much for helping me get to this point. And thank you everyone for being here.
Thanks so much. Have a great evening.